Good evening, everyone. This is the June 15th meeting of the Fairfield Harbor Management Commission. I'm Kim Taylor, the chair. Because of COVID regulations, the public can listen but will not be heard. However, if anyone is interested in sending their comments to the commission, they will be added to the minutes. Such comments should go to hmc@fairfieldct.org with, in the subject line, put HMC 6/15/2021 meeting. We need to have your name and address, and that will also be in the minutes. However, we will not include your email address. So this evening, we have Harry French.
Yeah.
Ted Schwartzman.
Here.
Eric Sunman.
Here.
Jack Hirschler.
Here.
Sam Cargill. Mark Foster.
I'm here.
Great, Mark. Libby Trischler. Doug Metchick. Harbor Master Billings.
Here.
Jeff Stedman.
Here.
Betty Gabriel.
I called Betty. This is Jeff, Kim.
Yep.
She was leaving town hall about 45 minutes ago, and she was hoping to make it in time to join the beginning of the meeting.
Well, I'm sure she'll join us when if she's not stuck in traffic. Sam Cargill, Libby Trischler, Doug Metchick. Okay. I have not muted everyone, but I will do so now. So if you are, I apologize if that's going to confuse things. Let me do that, and then we'll get the meeting started. Okay, everyone is now muted, and you can unmute yourself. We can get the show on the road. The first order of business was to approve the May 18th minutes. However, Betty was unable to get to the May 18th minutes, so we will put that on the agenda for our July meeting. The next item on our agenda is the chairman's report. It includes two letters, both dated May 18th. The first was from Attorney John Casey of Robinson & Coles, commenting on the Commission's discussion and decision at its April meeting. If you recall, that was the meeting where we found no exception to the Harbor Master's requests to Mr. Owens about his ownership information of 789 Harbor Road. The letter was, I have forwarded it on to all of the commissioners.
Kim, I'm here. It's Sam Cargill. So sorry I'm late.
Oh, that's all right. Welcome. Glad you're here, Sam.
Kim, I'm here as well. It's Betty.
Great, Betty. Phew, I'm glad you're here.
Me too.
Commenting on our discussion, and the town attorney has responded to Mr. Casey on our behalf. I don't know, haven't seen that, but in any event, he's taken care of that for us. The second letter you should have gotten with the agenda. That was the letter from the Harbor Master to Mr. Owens.
All right, all set. Have a good one.
Describing the reasons denying his request for a mooring permit. And so that all of you have seen now, too. And that was also dated May 18th. So that's the only correspondence this month. Ed Billings, Harbor Masters report.
Everyone. Let's see. Well, let's start where I usually do with online mooring. No issues this month. Yay. Currently, the last time I looked at the list was yesterday. We have about 70 people now on the wait list. There's been probably 4 in the past 2 weeks that I have allowed. And the only other thing with online mooring is, it does point out everyone's discrepancy, or discrepancies, as the case may be. We do have a number of people, about maybe 8 to 10, that are still pending a permit. They have paid, but they have yet to remit their insurance and or their registration for their vessel. 2 moorings are currently vacant this year, and those 2 moorings are taken. Both people are former mooring holders from 2020, and they have requested their 1-year grace period to occupy the mooring, which was granted. Other than that, I'm sorry, I'm just going by my memory. I'm sure Jack will fill everyone in on anything that I have omitted. But if I may say, it's been a privilege to be your harbor master for nearly 2 years. So a difficult decision that I had to make, but in the best interest of my family, I felt that I had to do that. But I've made what I hope to be our lifelong friends with many of you. We've accomplished a lot, I believe, at the end of 2019 to date with the online mooring, the new rules, which I can't take credit for that. That's most of that is Jack and Jeff and others. But Pat Carroll, so many people contributed that. It was good to see that finally approved without too much of a problem. And I look forward to good things. I hope everyone will stay in touch. And I want to thank you again and wish you, as I do, fair winds and following seas to you all.
Thank you, Ed. We will certainly miss you for sure, and are delighted, however, that you have an opportunity that is better than what we could offer you here in Southport. Are there any questions for the Harbor Master?
Tim, this is Jeff. Might I say
Jeff.
something?
Yes, of course.
Thanks, Ed. It was good to work with you. And the town you're going to is the current residence of the former commissioner of the Connecticut DEP, who was quite involved, to say the least, in the development of the Southport Harbor Management Plan. So I'm very interested to hear when you first meet Mr. Rock of your conversation with him. I think it'll be quite interesting. He's a very interesting character.
Yeah, thank you. I do look forward to it.
Tell him we say. I'm not laughing because we have great respect for him. He's just a very interesting character, and he was, quite involved with the issues in Southport Harbor so many years ago.
Any other questions or comments to Ed, commissioners?
Well, we will definitely miss Ed. Whereabouts in Maine are you going to be going?
Well, I'm basically going back to my hometown on the island of Deer Isle, and I'll be
Oceanville
part of Stonington, which I know you're very familiar with.
Oh yes, have spent much time up there.
Yep. Well,
It's a
you look
beautiful
me up
area.
if you're in the area.
We'll certainly do that.
Other commissioners? Okay. Thanks so much, Ed.
Thank you.
Okay. Lower Wharf project. Jeff?
Well, I guess I can talk briefly about that. We have the proposal submitted by Race Coastal Engineering for not renewing the permit, but getting the permit over again for the work that we've long planned. However, as we discussed last month, the grant that we have from the Connecticut Port Authority, plus the amount of money that's still available in the Commission's account for this work, is not enough to do. I don't believe is enough. My understanding is not enough to complete the project as envisioned, and also allocate the money for the new permit. So we have somewhat of a dilemma and a question to address. I did talk with the representative of the Connecticut Port Authority, which provided the grant to us for the dredging of the dredging project. He was quite positive. Apparently, the Port Authority, there's been some new legislation that's about to pass that's changing some of the operation of the Port Authority. No, not the operation, but yeah, I guess it is the operations of the Port Authority to provide more transparency. But they've also, according to the person I talked with, have authorization to provide additional grants. They've received authorization to accept additional applications for grants. So this person I talked with said that we can reasonably expect that we would be able to apply for additional money to do this work. But we're going to have to make a decision about the scope, and we have the application or the proposal submitted by Race. On Saturday of last week, during the blessing of the fleet and the parade, I did have a chance to talk with Mr. Cathcart, the marina manager for the town, at the town boatyard, and we looked at the dinghy docks to the south, and we had thought about perhaps changing our scope of work and maybe requesting a permit to do some additional or alternative work, which might involve realigning those docks. But Mr. Cathcart doesn't think there's anything to be gained by doing that. So I guess we, perhaps between now and the next meeting, we should have a committee meeting to discuss and make a recommendation for action by the Commission at its next meeting, what to do with that pending proposal for getting the permit again, which is, as you know, is a substantial amount of money. It's $32,000, which is a substantial part of that involves the resurveying of the depths that would be dredged, and also the retesting of the sediment that would be dredged. So we'll have to make a decision. But the good news is it appears that there will be an opportunity to request additional funds from the Connecticut Port Authority. Sorry for you talking so long, but that's my report on that.
That's good. Do we have any sense whether they would that kind of request could be to supplement a grant that they've already?
Yes. That was the purpose of talking about it.
Okay.
But I don't know yet when that next round would be available. That's something more to think about. But it will take us a bit of time to get the new permit. But we've spent an awful lot of money. I say we, the Commission, on this project with respect to permitting, much more so far than we've done in terms of any. Well, I take it back. We did accomplish improvement and some rebuilding of the boat launching ramp.
Right.
And we talked about that on Saturday, Mr. Cathcart and I. That's an obvious opportunity for an improvement if we could excavate at the toe of that ramp, put in the final plank, and adjust the slope of the final plank that's in there now, that would be a substantial, public improvement. But of course, the question is, what do we do with the material that would be excavated in order to do that? And Mr. Cathcart doesn't have, is not real supportive of putting that excavated material on the ground at the town boatyard and having it dewater and then putting it into trucks. And he thinks that might be an issue with the adjoining property owners. But if there's a way to accomplish that would be a substantial improvement. So I guess between now and the next meeting, we have to give some more thought to this.
Oh, absolutely. Commissioners, you had the proposal from Race. I guess I forwarded it on to you after the last meeting, so now everybody has seen that proposal. And we had quite a good conversation last meeting with Devin Santa about the project. Any reactions? Any suggestions?
We really need to move on that, but then it's all going to come down to the ability of the commission to be able to pay for it.
Right.
And Harry, it's Jeff again interrupting. I'm sorry, but we haven't been able to do this project not through any fault of our own, but primarily because of the lack of cap material from other dredging projects. And that will still be an issue unless there's a significant federal project that would provide a lot of cap. And I believe it was Mr. Santa who's quite knowledgeable or up to speed on what's going on with dredge disposal in Long Island Sound. Both he, maybe it was also the fellow from the Port Authority, that New York State continues to be not supportive of Connecticut dredging projects. They have a role in signing off on the disposal of dredge material in Long Island Sound, except for federal projects, and they're essentially delaying any action on the private projects. So we still have that issue to deal with of the availability of cap material and the timing and the anticipation that we're not going to get prompt agreement from New York State on any project. But again, those are outside of our control.
Somehow we have to figure out how much additional funds we're going to need and find out if and when we're going to be able to get that.
Yeah, it's a dilemma because we can't do anything without the permit, and when we're moving ahead with the permit, we can't be assured that we can do the work while we're trying to get the permit.
And as I recall, this is Kim, from our meeting with Race, they suggested that there were several other communities that had projects waiting for cap material, and there's no system by which, if there is cap material available, there's no system by which getting that cap material to folks who need it. There's no system for that, so it's kind of a wild, wild west. You know, how do you get it? I mean, first come, first serve. I mean, to who? So it's even more complicated.
This is Harry, but you would think that either the DEEP or the Army Corps of Engineers would be able to coordinate that better.
Right.
For everyone.
You would. You're absolutely right, Harry. You would think that.
Because they're in the seat as to knowing who's doing what.
Right. Right.
This is Jeff again. It's been my understanding, whether I'm right or not, that the Corps of Engineers has been the responsible party for doing that coordination, not DEEP. And
okay.
And I know that Race had been, Mr. Sternberg particularly, had been communicating regularly with the Corps of Engineers, prior to that, that permit expiring, and trying to see if there's a way we could switch the disposal site to the Western Long Island Sound site where we would not need the cap material, and that proved not to be feasible. So that was an exercise that we went through. I don't know what the answer is other than to discuss again before the next meeting, if there's a way of at least doing that the boat launch, completing the boat launching ramp project in a way that's not objectionable to the neighbors, and some way but we'd still have to test the material, and we'd still have to dewater it before it could be put in trucks and taken anywhere.
But as I recall, Jeff, this is Kim, that the folks at Race seem to think that it wouldn't be a monster pile of mud, that it would be a fairly small amount of stuff, and it seems that if we could do that, that's at least something we have control over.
Yes, but we'd still need the permit to do it,
right.
but perhaps we wouldn't proceed with the permit to do all of the dredging.
Right.
But on Saturday, Mr. Cathcart said that he would be willing to sit down with us and go. I don't believe he's seen all of the plans that we've put together over time. So maybe it would be a good exercise to ask if Mr. Santa, Mr. Sternberg, and members of the commission, we could meet with the town engineer, not just on a phone conversation, but meet in their office and with Mr. Cathcart for a discussion about how to move forward.
I think that's a terrific idea.
Yeah. I mean, at least that's starting to move the cart forward, so to speak.
Exactly, and at the time we can make it the question about the boats at the dinghy dock being on the mud flats could also be explained, explored, reviewed, which would also help the commission make its decision. Is it Harry? Is there any other commissioner who would like to participate in that meeting?
I'd be more than happy.
Okay, great.
Kim, it's Mark. I'd be happy to join in if I'm available.
Okay. Are you in the city during the day, Mark, or are you still remote?
Not normally. The time's coming quick when I'll have to be in the city.
Yeah.
On occasion, at least.
Okay.
And I'll have some flexibility when that happens.
Great. Okay. So Mark and Harry, that would be wonderful. Maybe Jeff and Jeff get together with the Race folks and Justin Cathcart.
I can call all of those people and ask when would be a good time to meet with them, and we would ask to meet in the town hall.
Great, Jeff.
Right.
I think that's an excellent idea, and
yeah,
that's a good first step. And then I don't think we lose by waiting another month or even two. Frankly, I don't think we lose too much in terms of timing on the whole project, since we're looking at the dredging season a couple
they can't do it
out
until
anyway.
October anyway.
Right, and probably not this year, sadly. But maybe we're wrong. Maybe it could be done more quickly. But in any event, I think that's great. So let's proceed with that meeting, and we'll see what, if anything, it produces. That's terrific.
I had a question for
Jeff. Yeah, please, Mark, go ahead.
So Jeff, are there any time of year restrictions other than I'm looking at the permit authorization that's 2012 that says dredging is prohibited between April 1st and June 30th. Is that still the time of year restriction that we would face, as far as we know?
No, there's more. I have to check because I don't believe we can do any work before. But part of the restrictions have to do with shellfish, and the other has to do with finfish. And so I don't know which of those two you're referring to, but I'm pretty sure we can't start dredging before October 1. And
okay,
I don't know
but that's fine because we wouldn't want to do that anyway.
Right, right.
No, you
so
wouldn't want to do it in season.
Right. So I guess where I'm going is if we can do this in the dead of winter, there
Yes.
aren't many people who would have a stake on our use of the site for dewatering.
Yes.
Except obviously, people who live right there, but plus very few other people. And I'm just wondering if it makes some sense to take the temperature of the people, some of the people who live there now, just through those who we know, for starters, informally, just to get so we can start to gather more information about what we might be facing.
Yes, a very good idea, and also we would, I think before we do that, Mark, we get a sense from Race as to how big the pile of excavated material might be, in order to be able to place those new planks in.
So Jeff, it's Jack. I think if I lived there, I would have a question about how long the process would take to remove it as well, the dewatering process. So how much and how long, I think, are probably the two questions.
Yeah.
Right. How smelly, too, but that's harder to answer.
Yeah. Well, but we would have to test the material before it came out of the water, so we would at least know, whether it's just going to be mud or whether it's what else is there and kind of at what concentration. So, hopefully that would be reassuring.
Yeah. Well, that's a good idea, though, Mark.
Yeah, it is a good idea
to talk with the neighbors ahead of time. But we'd also, of course, have to get permission from the Parks and Rec Commission.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay. But again, those are things that we can do as opposed to waiting for somebody else to have a dredging project or waiting for New York State to get to make a decision.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So.
Yeah.
So.
Yes.
It feels like we could move ahead a little bit, maybe.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other Lower Wharf? Any other questions? Comments? Okay. Sand management. Mark and Jeff.
Yeah, I have nothing to report from my end. Jeff, what, anything new on your end?
No, I don't keep talking here. I'm doing too much talking, but we had hoped to have met with the Corps of Engineers prior to the meeting today, and that hasn't happened because they just haven't had the time with their other work to meet with us. And I think I mentioned last week that they want to discuss several things with the commission, and I've kept the DEEP informed about this as well. But the Corps' intent was to meet with representatives of the commission before involving DEEP, and this of course concerns the restoring the full width of the entrance channel through the sandbar. So the Corps said there are I guess there's four things to discuss with the commission, and one is so that we understand that they're planning to do this with their own dredge, but they will also need access from the land, and they will need to use some on-land excavating equipment, just as the town did after Storm Sandy, and that's because that they would use that excavating equipment not to put the sand in trucks and take it along the beach and take it to town beaches, but to place it into the hopper of their dredge, which would then go offshore a bit, as we know, and disperse it and hopefully improve shellfish habitat. So we will need permission and an agreement with the country club, as we did for the Public Works project, to have access for on-land equipment and to operate the equipment from the land. The other matter that they need to discuss is, as with any permit application, the applicant has to attest to and explain the applicant's interest in the property. Now, so in other words, who owns the sandbar? That's the Corps is going to be working on that, and they would need permission from DEEP, and they have to explain this is an issue that their real estate department, the Corps' real estate section has brought up. So we have to address the ownership of the sandbar. The third, of course, is how we plan to mitigate the impacts on the grass, the grasses, the Panicum amarum, and that's where we bring back the botanist that we've been working with. We need to calculate, which the Corps is doing. We had offered to do that through the engineering department, but they're based on their plans and the side slope for restoring the 100-foot wide channel. What is the area of the protected grass that would be disturbed, and then that's what we have to compensate or mitigate for. And then the other, although they didn't mention this, it's something that's understood in the federal dredging projects, and it came up recently in the town of Greenwich. But we have to demonstrate and attest that the harbor is managed by the Harbor Commission in accordance with the open to all on equal terms policy of the Corps of Engineers. And I believe that we do that because the moorings are open to everyone, and everyone can be on the waiting list. An out-of-town person can have access, use the boat launching ramp, can get a permit from the town hall and use the ramp. There is the public landing, which is on the north side of the town boatyard and which is required in the federal authorizing documents for the channel. And then we're going to have to address the out-of-town people's use and opportunities to use those dinghy docks. And historically, if someone has received a mooring from out of town, they've been able to get a permit to use the dinghy docks. So, although that wasn't mentioned as one of the specific 3 items to discuss with us, it's understood that we'll have to address that. But so hopefully before the next meeting, we can have our small meeting with the Corps. And again, I apologize for talking too much, but that's where we are on that.
Commissioners, questions for Jeff? Reactions?
It's a lot more red tape, but you've got to do it. Right.
And there's a lot of sand there, so it's
building
up fast. It's
yeah. We need the channel deeper, and all that sand just kind of blows over the rock ledge.
Commissioners, any other thoughts? Okay. Thanks, Jeff. Very much.
Okay.
Mooring Committee, Jack?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah.
The Mooring Committee met on June 10th. Ed already covered the status of the waiting list. He did reference the folks who are missing required document images, and the permits are not being issued to those people at this point until those are submitted. And an email was sent to Kim and to me and Jeff Engborg at BYC with the names of those people so that we would be aware of who those people are who haven't been issued permits because of missing information at this point. In addition, Ed reported the prior day on June 9th that he had a face-to-face meeting at Town Hall with an attorney representing Mr. Owens' Freedom of Information Act request for documents, and he brought the boxes that he inherited from Harbor Master Schuler and allowed the attorney to go through those documents. The result of that review was a number of documents were copied, and I understand that Kim has a set of electronically of the documents that were copied for counsel in connection with the FOIA request. I also reviewed with the committee the status of online moorings update to the systems administrative support in connection with our updated, recently enacted rules and procedures. Substantially all of the rules changes are now programmed into online mooring, and we're pretty much set for administering the new rules at the beginning of next year. There was a discussion about the new rules that were just passed by the Commission, requiring folks to supply, going forward, starting next year, a copy of the permit holder's Connecticut Safe Boating Certificate. And we discussed that it would be a good idea for Ed to email everyone in the online mooring database to alert them to that requirement, so if they happen not to have obtained it, they could sign up this summer to take the course. That would give them that document that's going to be required. Again, we discussed that that is not something that ever needs to be renewed, so once somebody submits it, they're done with that requirement as long as they have it. And Ed did send that email on June 10th. That's my report. If anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to take them.
If I can add to that report,
go ahead, Ed.
I received a flurry of emails regarding the Connecticut. Help me out here. It's been a stressful day.
Safe boating.
The Safe Boating Certificate. Those currently, a lot of the queries were regarding how do I upload it, and I wasn't quite sure how they could upload it. But one suggestion that I had was, if perchance you did not have your very latest vessel registration, that may prevent you from uploading the document because you're not 100% clear. But some people had no problem, others did, and I know Kim is going to report on another individual, so I'll let her do that. But I think it met with great success based on the emails that I got.
Yeah, Ed, I think one thing that we should let all the commissioners know, in case any of you get a question about this, according to the DEEP website, the requirement in the state of Connecticut is that owners of vessels are required to have the Safe Boating Certificate. So if you have a permit and you have somebody else operating your boat for you, but it's your boat and then the permit's in your name, you need to have the certificate. That's number one. Number two is the state will allow people to, instead, as an alternative to having the Safe Boating Certificate, if you have a U.S. Coast Guard captain's license, a so-called six-pack license, or a master's license, they accept that in lieu of the Connecticut Safe Boating Certificate, except if you're operating a jet ski, a personal watercraft. So for folks who have captain's licenses, they don't need to supply a Safe Boating Certificate, but they do need to upload an image of that first page in your Merchant Mariner's license, which shows that it's current and issued to you. So if you get a question, that it's already come up with one person already, the captain's license is an alternative.
I actually responded to that guy that, based on my experience years ago, I figured that when the personal watercraft licenses first came out, it's been quite a while. I mean, I already had a 100-ton license, and it's like, geez, to get a personal watercraft really is not a big deal versus the hoops you have to jump through and the sea time that you have to prove to get your Master Mariner document. But that was not good enough back then. And I had to take the course and all of that stuff, and that's what I passed on to this individual. So that DEEP must have recently redone that, which makes a lot of sense.
Sure,
that makes sense. Yeah. This is Kim. I just want to add that the documents that were turned over to the Robinson and Cole, that the Robinson and Cole firm copied from the documents that were turned over to them. Ed made a copy, an electronic copy that went to me, to the town attorney, and I believe Ed to Deep. Is that correct?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So we know what they copied, and we have that information available. So, any other questions or comments about the Mooring Committee report or Mooring Committee matters? Okay. So the Plan Update Committee meeting, we met on May 27th. The committee reviewed the second part of Chapter 6 of the plan. Those are the sections that set out coastal resources, access to the water, plan implementation, actions of the Commission, responsibilities of the Harbor Master, and the Harbor Commission priorities and goals. It was interesting to take a look at those sections because they all described ways in which the Commission should be working with other state, local, and federal bodies and authorities, and it really is a reminder of how much of what we do interacts with other official agencies at all levels of government. So again, the committee reviewed each one of those sections and made suggestions to update where appropriate. And some of those suggestions included adding language to emphasize the importance of protecting water quality and Mill River and Sasko Brook watershed planning. There was in the access to the water section. There was in the current plan. There's a recommendation that the town acquire Trev stock. Well, of course, we'll have to modify that since that's the lower wharf, and the town now owns the dock. There were several descriptions of public access ways to the harbor. We've asked for clarification from the Conservation Commission on some of those. It was not clear exactly on a couple of them where they were, and so we've reached out to the Conservation Commission just to be sure that they still maintain those public access ways. And the other suggestion was since the town now owns the lower wharf and the McMahon property, that perhaps adding deeds and more detailed descriptions of the property as appendices would be appropriate. So. That was our meeting. The next meeting will be on Thursday, and at that meeting we plan to review the comments that were made to the survey that we did back in the spring, and get the survey ready to be uploaded onto the town website, so that we can all see what the results were and what things folks had on their mind. So. Any questions? Any thoughts?
When is that meeting? Thursday?
Thursday at 4. I will send you the agenda, Harry.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Any other questions, thoughts? Okay. Changes to the rules and procedures. Jack?
Well, the update on the rules and procedures is we've sort of moved to the final step for implementation. Now that the Commission has enacted the update, we need the town code chapter changes that we have reviewed and recommended to the RTM. So I guess what we have done so far is made contact with Karen Wackerman to understand the steps for that process of updating the town code. There is a meeting next Monday of the Legislation and Administration Committee of the RTM, and at minimum they will be discussing our proposed changes, and we have offered for Kim and Jeff and for me to be available for their virtual meeting to address the changes and answer any questions that they might have at that virtual meeting next Monday evening. Kim has sent a letter yesterday to all the members of the Legislation and Administration Committee of the RTM and copied two RTM members who are not in that committee but have volunteered to co-sponsor our proposed changes at the RTM. And attached to the letter was a PDF of the proposed changes to Chapter 24, now with annotated notes that Jeff put in that explain the rationale for each of the little changes that we made, whether it be definitions or wording changes. That was a recommendation from Karen Wackerman, the moderator of the RTM, that could be helpful in their review if we supplied a brief explanation for the changes that we're making. So my sense is that the document that Jeff put together with the explanations, coupled with the possibility that we will be presenting those changes at the meeting next Monday, should make for a pretty smooth process of getting the RTM to approve. My understanding is that once the Legislation and Administration Committee has completed its review, then it would be considered by the full RTM. We were copied on a note between people on the Legislation and Administration Committee with a note that the Town Council has already reviewed our proposed changes and had no concerns with our proposed language. So that's another positive step. That's my update, I think, unless I've missed anything, Kim.
No, I think so. The only thing is that the rules, the changes to the rules have been posted on the website. So according to the COVID executive order, that is in lieu of publishing notice in the paper with all the rules, and that the date of publication on the website is in fact the effective date of the changes. So that's been done, and they're there. So that's good too. So, any questions? Any concerns?
Not at this point.
Okay. So, new business. How to proceed with the Harbor Master's resignation? What do we do for the summer? How do we find a new Harbor Master? Mark did some research on the town code, and Jeff did some research with the folks at DEEP. Mark, you want to go first?
Sure. I actually don't have notes to speak from in front of me, but I just looked at the town charter and simply read it to see what latitude we might have for filling in the gap should we have to do so between one harbor master and the next, and found language that indicated we can hire what they call a special agent to perform services that aid activities by the commission and the harbor master. So it seemed to me if that individual can assist with harbor master activities, then that person could serve to bridge over any gap between, again, one harbor master leaving and the next one formally being approved and assuming the role. Is that, Kim, what you're looking for?
Yeah, that's good. Thank you.
Okay.
And then, Jeff, you talked to DEEP to try and get some understanding of what their perceptions were of how to bridge the gap. What things people could do and what things people couldn't do. Correct? Jeff?
I was muted. I'm sorry, Kim.
Oh, that's okay. I'm glad you're here.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I talked with both.
Yeah, go ahead.
Both the person in DEEP, DEEP, and also in the governor's office about this, because the harbor master is a state official and has authorities and powers and duties that are established in the general statutes. So I don't mean to go on like a lecturing professor or something here, but there are certain things decisions that only the harbor master, who is appointed by the governor, can make. For example, decisions on mooring permits. The harbor master is responsible under the general statutes, and I forget the code, to station all vessels, and that's where the mooring authority comes from. So only the harbor master can issue a mooring permit. We can't. The Harbor Commission can't appoint an interim person to do that. So that's one matter. And when I spoke with the person in the governor's office, who's been quite helpful to us in the past, and I enjoy talking with him, he said, that when do you need the harbor master and what do you need him for? Recognizing that it may take some time to go through the process and select someone that we would then recommend to the governor for appointment, because that's how the appointment works. The governor has to appoint the harbor master from a list of not less than 3 people provided by the Harbor Commission. So we've been thinking about this, and so the mooring decisions, for example, these outstanding or pending mooring permits where the applicants have not provided their all of their materials. Those permits they're issued, through the online system, but in effect they're issued by the harbor master through the online system. So that's something that we have to think about. Taking people from the waiting list and assigning them to a vacant mooring location. That's another duty that only the harbor master can make under the general statutes. Moving vessels. For example, if we find that a vessel is anchored in the federal channel and the Corps of Engineers says that has, or moored in the federal channel, then it has to be moved, that's something that the harbor master has authority to order. We have in the plan and in the documents supporting the plan, as Mark said, the authority to appoint assistants and consultants, and I think we called it a dock master way back. But those were intended to be people who would assist the harbor master. They can't make harbor master decisions. So we have that issue of the decisions that the harbor master has to make, or that no one else but the harbor master can make. We don't need the harbor master should certainly have a role in updating the plan and in planning for the federal channel dredging, the sandbar, but it's not an essential role. We don't need the harbor master for that, but we do for the moorings. Now, we also have the situation where the yacht club is obligated to provide boating services to the commission to assist the commission in managing the harbor in the public interest, and that's something that is established in the harbor management plan and in the memorandum of agreement that the town has with the yacht club. That hasn't been updated in a number of years, but it stays in effect until it's changed or updated. So there are operational and maintenance tasks or duties, which I believe the yacht club can continue to provide, and at the direction of the commission and the mooring committee. But the uncertain thing is who makes decisions having to do with the issuance of mooring permits and orders that, to move vessels. And the person in the governor's office said that he was going to think about it. We talked last week, but they had apparently a lot of things with pending legislation to work on, other matters, that it may be possible to assign someone with the harbor master to exercise the harbor master's authority on an interim basis. And I did explain to him the responsibilities of the yacht club for maintenance and operations, and that and what we needed the harbor master for. So we may be able to get someone to be assigned those authorities on an interim basis. DEP, one of the, and this forgive me for saying this because it's certainly not going to work, but one of the suggestions we were discussing or possibilities is that DEP be assigned to exercise the harbor master's authorities, since DEP provides oversight and the harbor master reports, at least according to the statutes, to the Commissioner of Energy and Environmental Protection. But that wouldn't work, and DEP wanted no part of that. But plus there's statutory reasons why that wouldn't work. So I guess the tasks are: do we want to proceed with identifying someone that we would ask be assigned the harbor master's authority on an interim basis while we go through the longer process of picking someone and recommending someone for the governor to appoint on a long-term basis. So again, that's my. But the fellow from the governor's office, Mr. Delana, has been very helpful to us, and I think he'll be responsive and work with us to try to figure out how to do this. So there's another long-winded report.
Oh, this is Kim. My thought is that we have these 7 or 8 boats that have not provided the documentation that's required in order to get the permit. But I believe that Ed has already made the decision about where they go. Mm-hmm. In other words, has assigned the moorings, and in a couple of cases, I think they're docked vessels. So I guess the question is is that still, even though Ed's already made those decisions, is that still something that we need an interim harbor master to do? Or could this person that Mark has discovered, the special agent, is that something that he could, if we assigned a special agent, is that something that he could do?
I guess we have to discuss it with the person from the governor's office.
Right.
The way I would look at that. Is the special agent, Mark? Is that in the town code?
Yes, it's in the. I'm just pulling it up. The town charter.
Town charter.
Was Chapter 24, wasn't it, Mark? Chapter 24.
That's the code.
Yeah.
Here it is. And there's the town charter.
Right. So I guess I sent you an email, Kim, and I have to.
I'm looking.
But I don't have that in front of me to tell me where I saw this.
I'm pretty sure it was in the town code.
So I guess my sentiment, for what it's worth, while we're looking here, is we're going to take care of this. It's just a matter of how we couch what we do. And to me, it doesn't make sense that for a state person to get involved on stuff. I mean, the whole point of this whole process is to have decisions like this made by people with local familiarity. So we're going to handle it locally. It's just a matter of how we couch it. It's hard for me to figure that we would get a legal challenge, for example, because we're acting in an interim basis when we don't have a harbor master. So if we can't issue a mooring permit, we'll issue an interim mooring permit, for example. I'm not saying that we should go with the extra steps that Jeff's talking about. I'm just saying we should probably relax in the meantime and plan on success and plan on handling it locally.
It's 24-8 under powers and duties, and it's paragraph F as in Fred, as you said, Mark, to assist the Harbor Management Commission and the Harbor Master in their duties hereunder. The Harbor Management Commission, with the advice of the Harbor Master, may appoint a special agent or agents who will serve at the pleasure of the Harbor Management Commission as an assistant.
It's Jack. Just for a little additional context, for people who are applying for the waiting list, the online mooring system records in the system when the person paid and applied to be on the waiting list and keeps them in that order. So while they wouldn't be approved by the harbor master, they are not harmed in any way by having to wait till there's a new harbor master. And I also talked to Online Mooring, and they indicated that they can easily set up an automatic reply email that would go as soon as somebody submits a waitlist application to tell them that they're, what I just said, that they're waiting, that their application's been received, it's been accepted from an administrative standpoint, and is in a pending status until a new harbor master has had a chance to review and approve it. But their position is locked in at this point. So that's one of the kinds of things that occurs administratively throughout the year. With respect to the issuing permits, with the exception of these people with outstanding documents that haven't received permits, I'm not aware that there are any more permits to be issued this year. And so we're really talking about a handful of important administrative decisions that we'll need to get an answer to before we get a new harbor master, in my view.
Right. This is Kim. We only have about I don't think it's even 6 people that we have to just send the permits to when they provide us with the documents.
Right. And I think that, Kim, you made a good point that these permits have already been approved by the harbor master with respect to assignment of it. It's just an administrative gap that a required document hasn't been submitted yet. So perhaps, like Mark is suggesting, we can find another way to position and couch this, that this is just an administrative gap that once received, the permit could be issued. And would have to, like Jeff says, get clarification on exactly what we can do in the system.
Right, and we don't know how long it will take to find a new harbor master. It may be, and we'll get into that in a minute, but it may be, that there's nothing on that list of things that Jeff enumerated that are specifically harbor master duties that have to be done aside from these 6 permits going forward. So I guess then we get to the next question of if we can appoint this person. We can appoint this person if we can ask this person to check the online mooring system and issue the permits. Is that really all that we need to have done? And who would that person be? Do we want to do that? Any thoughts, Commissioners?
Kim, this is Ted.
Yep, Ted.
I would think that we would want someone in that capacity, because I think the likelihood of some sort of harbor master related issue coming up over the next couple months while we search for a full fledged harbor master is probably pretty high, and probably unpredictable what that's going to be, whether it's a boat blocking the navigation way, or a storm coming through, or whatever else you might have. So I would think at the very least we would want to have someone in that position, so that if an issue arises, there's a point person who could then, marshal the necessary forces to address whatever issue that is. I think by not having someone in that position, we're taking a great risk that an issue arises like a storm coming through, where there's a number of issues that were unpredictable and no one knows who's responsible or what to do.
Commissioners, any? Harry?
This is Harry. I think it also would be important that we put someone in that position just in case. It's better to be prepared than not.
I'm just not. I'm not opposed to this at all. I just don't understand what they're going to be authorized to do based on what Jeff shared with us. What can they do?
Well, perhaps nothing, but at least they could be a point person to raise the issue to whoever they need to raise it to and resolve it. You know, maybe they need to get the town attorney involved. Maybe they need to reach out to DEEP. There's got to be someone who will be in an authority position who could decide to move a boat out of the channel, for example. But if there's no one in that position, how do you even know who to contact?
Right.
Well, we know that the good people at Pequot Yacht Club are there every day, and they have done. They've done a fantastic job of helping out in the case of storms and moving boats and boating accidents and all those kinds of things. I mean, I chatted with Chris Smith briefly, and he's of course indicated their willingness and to continue to be reliable and good partners in the harbor. But I feel a little uncomfortable kind of tossing it their way and then kind of walking away from it. And just saying, give us a call if something comes up.
This is Jeff again. For what it's worth, the section concerning the power to station vessels in the general statute applies to all vessels at anchor or mooring or at docks. And then the harbor master has the authority under this section to give orders to people for maintaining for moving vessels. So it's that power to give an order concerning the location of a vessel that is enforceable under the statute, and can be enforced by the local police department, which can enforce state laws. So there's penalties for resisting an order of the harbor master, that's made in the interest of having to do with the vessel and in the interest of safe navigation, and some other things as well. So I think it's that like Ted said, you don't know when you might need that authority, but it's an authority that someone that the Harbor Commission might appoint as an assistant or a dockmaster wouldn't have. We don't know when you might need to use the authority, but I think that's it. Any person who refuses to obey the order of the Harbor Master is in the execution of the duties of his office is subject to certain penalties.
Jeff, I don't want to get this off track here, but if we had appointed an assistant harbor master, would they have the authority to do these things in the absence of the harbor master, or is it just a limited role?
No, because you can't appoint an assistant harbor master. It's because the harbor master is a state official. You can appoint someone who would.
There are towns that have assistant harbor masters.
There are towns that have deputy harbor masters.
Deputy. And the deputies don't. I used the wrong word. Do deputy harbor masters have any authority, really?
Yes, they have all the authority of the harbor master in the absence of the harbor master, but they are also appointed by the governor.
No. This is not a fix. This might be a long-term thing for us to think about.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so that would have been if we had one, we wouldn't be having this conversation.
If there was a deputy harbor master, the deputy would have all the powers and duties of the harbor master in the absence of the harbor master.
Yeah.
Jeff, is that a paid position by the state? The deputy harbor master?
Both the harbor masters and the deputies receive a stipend from the state, but it's relatively minimal. It's I don't know if it's even $1,000 a year, but it's a minimal stipend that's paid.
But if we were to appoint a deputy harbor master, would the state automatically provide that stipend, or would there have to be some debate at the state level whether they're willing to do that or not?
Well, again, Ted, you could recommend to the governor the 3 names for a deputy, but the governor would have to appoint that deputy.
Okay, I see. Well, I'm just supporting what Jack said. We may want to think about that when we appoint a harbor master, having a deputy harbor master as well.
Yeah.
So
Kim,
if we
were to appoint someone on an interim basis, I understand what Jeff is saying, which is they would not have the authority of the harbor master and could not issue those orders. Mm-hmm. But what they could do is they could, for example, call the police and say, we have an issue with a derelict boat that needs to be moved. Mm-hmm. The harbor master would have the authority to do this. You, as the local police, have the authority. I'm recommending that you move it. I think the boat would get moved if we had someone in that position. So, I just think we need a point person in that role because there's unpredictable. Hopefully, nothing comes up in between now and when we appoint someone full time. But I'm not willing to make that bet.
Well, I think that's the cautious approach. I don't disagree, Ted. The tropical storm came through last year and blew all those moorings away, and somebody had to decide where to put those boats. And I mean, certainly the folks at the yacht club can make that decision, but I'm not sure that we're asking them to do more than what there was really necessary, what's really required. And putting them in kind of a precarious spot if they don't have the authority to do it, and we're asking them to do it. So how would we, Jeff? So I guess we really need to know from the governor's office what they need from us in order to appoint an interim.
Right. I think, and Mr. Delana, with whom I spoke, said that we should discuss this as we're doing today, and then get back to him, and he would continue the discussion. The other thing that the harbor, maybe it's not directly relevant, but the harbor master as a state official, and if there was a deputy, they're indemnified by the state for actions that they take that are not, wanton or malicious. So they're, well, I guess I'm thinking of liability too in terms of making certain decisions.
Sure. Yeah. So I guess, Jeff, I guess we have 2 questions really for Mr. Delaney. The first is, how would we go about appointing an interim? What would he need from us? And number 2, is the interim the only person who could assign those very few, who could mail, really is what we're asking. Could they mail the mooring permits to those 5 or 6 people who have already paid and are just owe us some documents? Mm-hmm. Do we need an interim to do that, or can we deputize somebody to go ahead and do that?
I think that's a question that we would also need to discuss with DEEP, because so I don't think we can't resolve these matters today. Would this be a more the responsibility of a particular committee, or how a new committee, or how would?
Well, I would like to appoint a search committee tonight to begin the work of finding a new harbor master, and I don't. I hate to have a search committee get slowed down, if you will, by appointing an interim, working on the appointment of an interim. Perhaps it's a mooring committee issue. I'd be willing to set up a new committee. I have no idea.
But I think we can organize a meeting with Mr. Delana, Dalena, and from the governor's office, and Mr. Blatt from DEEP. And
okay.
I think that would be helpful to do in the near term.
Okay.
I think we can do that. Maybe one of them can set up a Zoom meeting so we can talk about this.
Okay. Commissioners, anyone, please, anyone interested in attending that meeting and asking the questions?
Jack, I'd like to, yeah.
Okay, Jack.
Sure.
Anyone else?
Sure. This is Mark.
Mark, great.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's say that's the group that would attend the meeting with Mr. Delaney and Mr. Black and ask the questions. We could have, use Mark's agent, the agent that Mark found that we can appoint to just manage those few moorings that are outstanding. That would be useful too. So, any other comments from commissioners? Thoughts?
Are those boats already in the harbor, or have they not been launched yet?
I believe, Harry, and Jack and Ed, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe that the 2 docked vessels that have not submitted their documents are actually in the harbor. I believe that Ed said that the others that would be on moorings are not in the harbor.
Okay.
That's correct. To the best of my knowledge, that's correct.
Right, okay.
And again, this is Jeff interrupting, sorry, but this special agent, I'm just looking at this on the website, with the advice of the harbor master may appoint a special agent. Why couldn't that be one of the staff of the Pequot Yacht Club or Mr. Engborg, since they already have that responsibility to provide certain services to the Harbor Management Commission under the Memorandum of Agreement or the Memorandum of Understanding, or whatever the proper term is. As long as they're not making the harbor master's decisions, they're not issuing the mooring permit, because that would be a conflict. But as far as moving a boat, well, anyway, I just started talking without thinking, but that's maybe something to give consideration to. But we also have to be cognizant of the issue of liability. If someone makes a decision that's, we're saying is replacing a harbor master's decision, and then something goes wrong.
Right. Well, if I can speak, Jeff, it's Mark. If there's a question about risk or liability, that's a serious question. So I would ask: is the commission through the town's own law here appoints a special agent to act on behalf of the commission? Is that person's action considered an extension of the town of Fairfield? So to me, it seems like it is, and then to ask a good question on that to the town, or to somebody with knowledge of this. I probably want to just add a few bullets as to what that person would be doing. Maybe that matters, and maybe it doesn't. But I'm thinking that the person is acting as a special agent to a commission of the town of Fairfield, and the person is not ordering but asking people to do X, Y, or Z. What is the risk of that?
Well, to me, that would be a question for the state, their state representative. And then anybody who is appointed in that role would have to be indemnified by the state and by the town, because there would be implied liability if you had anyone from the yacht club, an employee from the yacht club. That's what concerns me. And one other thing to think about, I know nothing runs well with the committee, but what if there is one that acts in that capacity? And one would be, we have assigned to the online system, one would be to the operational issues that are 90% of what the job is, that the yacht club can help with, obviously. You have launchmen that are on the waterway all day long. They're seeing wayward boats. They're seeing and saving people in certain situations. If there's any issues with the moorings, they're the first line of defense anyhow. And in the event of a storm, the club already has protocols that I think they should just have the entire harbor know about, taking windage down from your boat in a hurricane, securing your boat to the mooring with the harness. There's certain things that have to happen. They're pretty pedestrian and they're pretty simple. So I just throw that out to the group, and I hate to make meetings go longer, but that's just my comment. I don't know if any of that's helpful or provocative.
Any thoughts, commissioners?
Kim, this is Ted.
Yep. Go ahead.
And it's not so much a thought on what was just said. It's really a thought on whether there might be a motion that the Harbor Management Commission can pass today, basically to empower you to keep the process moving along on finding someone in the interim role, so that you don't just take one step and then you have to report to us a month from now for approval to do something else. So thinking ahead, my hope would be that some group would come back to the commission at our next meeting and say, here's what we learned, and here's what we think we should do, and here's who the person is. Mm-hmm. And I'm not sure you could do that unless we pass some sort of motion saying that we authorize you as the chairperson to the committee to keep the process moving.
Okay, we certainly could do that. I mean, the other thing we could do is if we get answers from our meeting with Mr. Black and Mr. Delano, have a special meeting and set out, what they've said, and perhaps move ahead with some names. But you're suggesting, Ted, that we go ahead and have the meeting, and then based on what the meeting, what we learn at the meeting, then go ahead and look for folks?
No, just take the next steps, whatever they might be, as opposed to having to wait till the next HMC meeting to get a consensus on whether the commissioners are in favor of doing whatever you think we should do next.
Okay. I think that's probably a pretty good idea. Our next meeting is set up for July 20th, and I worry about the July and mid-August meetings, whether or not we will be able to have a quorum. So if we had a motion allowing, authorizing some next steps, that might be a good idea, especially if we're concerned about thinking that there might not be enough commissioners available in the middle of July to give us a consensus and move ahead. So, Ted, your motion would be to.
I'm willing to make the motion. I just don't know what the words are for that.
Yeah, I think, Ted, that you're making it's going in a good direction. I think we should give Kim substantial authority to even select. This is a very short-term thing, I'm hoping, for somebody quickly to be put in place. And I don't think that we want anything that will slow down the process. I would give Kim substantial authority to make the call on even the who is for this, to get somebody in place as quickly as possible. So I would be in favor of finding the answers to the questions, deciding the scope of what the role is going to be, and picking the persons to suggest to the governor's office if that's what's necessary. But and if it's easy to have a meeting, great. If not, I trust Kim to make the decision. I think we should give her that support for this, because it's an interim role for a few months, and the sooner the better.
Yeah.
So, Jack, what I heard you say, that we'd have a motion that would give the chair substantial authority to set out the scope of work and find the scope of work of this interim position,
Yep.
And to move ahead to find the person who would be qualified to fill the position.
Right, and I think you can interact with the commissioners to whatever extent makes sense during the heat of the summer to help you with that process. But that's your call.
Well, I don't think I want to do the. I don't think I want to do the appointment without the okay of the commissioners.
Okay,
so it would be to define the scope of work based on the meeting with Mr. Delaney and Mr. Black, and perhaps identify a person or persons who get in touch with the person or persons, and then come back to the commission.
Sounds good.
Mm-hmm. I would go along with that. This is Harry.
So, is that a second, Harry? Is that your? Are you moving?
That would be a second.
Okay. Wow. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Okay, great. Anyone opposed?
Aye. Sorry.
Okay. Okay, so we will have the meeting with Mr. Delaney and Mr. Black and proceed ahead. I would also like to set up a search committee for the harbor master position. Cheryl Beacock, who is a former commissioner and who has an HR background, has very generously agreed to participate. I am quite confident that we would move ahead efficiently. Again, I'm not sure how quickly we could find a person and proceed, come back to the find people, because we have to find three, come back to the commission with the names of three people that we would send on to the governor in view of the fact that it's summer and that people will be away. So I'm quite confident that we will be efficient. I am not at all confident that it will be quick. And I'm wondering if there are any commissioners who would like to participate in the search committee.
I will volunteer. This is Harry.
Harry, great. Harry, who else? Search committee to find three candidates to recommend to the governor so that he can appoint a new harbor master. Anyone besides Harry?
Mm-hmm.
Jack, Ted, Sam, anyone?
It's Jack. I will.
I'll help.
Okay.
And Sam, I'll help.
Okay.
I'm just as a note. I'm starting going back to the city, so I hope doesn't need to be a quorum every time, or it's a call in for much of the search. But just
okay. I'm hoping. I've heard unofficially that there's a possibility that we will be back in person meetings next month.
And that would be great.
Yeah, I don't know. I know that there was the hope was also to maintain a call-in component to the meetings. I'm not sure how the town tech folks have been, if they've been able to find a way to do that and set it up. So I'm hoping that we could do a lot of this, the search interviews certainly face to face, as opposed to call in. So, okay. So search committee: Harry French, Cheryl Beacock, Jack Hirschler, Sam Cargill. Anyone else? Great. That's a good start. And I will serve on that committee too. Okay. Any other new business? Any other comments on harbor management searches? Interim searches.
Kim,
let
me. I don't want to prolong things, but let me just, in connection with our discussion we were just having, I had a exchange today and a written communication with John Boyd from Online Mooring. And this is, I think, more for future, but potentially could be part of our current solution. Online Mooring, our current vendor for the administrative system, also is able to provide administrative processing itself. It's under a program called Harbor Assist. And the way that program works is they charge $10 per permit per year, and they do all the data entry work that the harbor master has been doing historically. So there's a fee-for-service way of the administration being done. So they do what the harbor master instructs them to do and can even review the kinds of documents for adequacy of the submitted documents and so forth. So that's an available capability. This is a second capability they're offering, which I don't think makes sense for us, but we should be aware that they have it. They have a staff licensed captain and former harbor master for 2 towns in Rhode Island who's available on an hourly basis to act in a harbor master type capacity. Doesn't sound like in the state of Connecticut that would work, but in other states they've been able to have him fill in temporarily. So that is a staff person on a currently approved town vendor that could provide more services than we currently have through just the system itself. So administrative system, even a harbor master who wouldn't be physically present but can act as an experienced harbor master from Tiverton and Bristol, Rhode Island historically. So I thought it was interesting. I was unaware until today that they had those capabilities.
Wow, very interesting. Commissioners, any questions? Wow, that's very interesting, Jack. That may, if we really get in a bind, that may help out in the fall.
Right, next winter, if God forbid, we're still looking for a harbor master, then in the peak of people applying in the system, we may very well need their administrative support. So good to know.
Right. That's good backup. Yes, thank you for that. Commissioners, any other comments about harbor master activities, searches? Any other new business?
There's one. I don't know if you mentioned it, Kim. It's Jeff.
Go ahead, Jeff.
That you did send a letter to DEEP concerning the Aquarian proposal, and that was transmitting the Commission's comments and recommendations as discussed during the May meeting of the Commission.
I forgot all about that. That's a blur. You're right. I did do that.
So there was a May 21 letter having to do with this public hearing that we sent to the hearing officer at DEEP. Now, I don't know what the status of all this is now, but I don't think we've heard back. But we expressed a concern about what seems to be the excessive length of the requested permit, and also the lack of environmental information downstream of the diversion, and the concern that how would you know if there's potential or if there are environmental impacts in the future if you don't know what's there now. But that was all sent in the letter to DEEP that was dated May 21.
Thank you, Jeff, keeping me honest. I also thought that the point that the commissioners that we raised with DEEP was that when we apply for an application, apply for a permit for any project or any private person does, they have to demonstrate what the environmental impacts of their project are going to be, whereas the public utilities don't have to demonstrate or set forth what the environmental impacts of the projects are going to be. In fact, that burden is on the folks who object to the permit, and that was a point that we made in the letter. And the letter that we sent to the hearing officer also went to all of our state and local representatives. So hopefully the state legislature will might even begin to consider whether or not that burden of proof is appropriate.
Yes.
Given what everybody else has to provide. So.
Yeah, it's very very interesting process as it applies to these public utilities. It's but anyway.
Right.
I just wanted to mention that we did spend a lot of time on that letter.
Thank you very much for reminding me about that. Commissioners, any new business? Any other comments, concerns? Before we adjourn, our next meeting is July 17th. I know that people are planning vacations, and please, if you intend not to be available on July 17th, if you would let me know or Betty know as soon as you know, so that if we if we don't have a quorum and there is no July meeting, we don't get a lot of people planning for something that's not going to happen. So. With that, can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved, Jack.
Thanks, Jack. Can I have a second?
I'll second it, Harry.
Thanks, Harry. Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Great. Anyone opposed?
Aye.
Okay. No one opposed, so we will reconvene on July 17th and enjoy this beautiful weather, everyone.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Bye-bye.
Bye.